Hello and welcome to the big picture. The gridlock in the US Congress, which has led to the shutdown of the US government, first time after 17 years, is well into its second day today. The shutdown, which has resulted in about 8 lakh workers being put on furlough and more being put on it in coming days, has slowly started sinking into the Americans. The shutdown is a result of what many say is because of the ideological differences between a section of Republicans and the Democrats on the health care pushed by President Obama. Though it's commonly believed that a few weeks of shutdown will not affect America in a major way, as it would if it happens in India, the real impact will start showing if it gets prolonged. Today we'll discuss why this shutdown has happened, what would be the impact and consequences of it, not just within America, but also on other countries in the world, including India. To discuss this, I have with me an experienced panel of guests. Meera, Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the United States, Dr. Ashok, Desai, a well-known economist, Professor K.P. Vijayalakshmi of the Center for American Studies at the JNU, Pramit Chaudhary, Foreign Affairs Editor, the Hindustan Times, and on the phone line from Washington, D.C. is Chidanand Rajghatta, Foreign Editor and US Correspondent of the Times of India. Welcome to all of you. Meera, Shankar, I would like to come to you first. This is being seen as an ideological battle between the Democrats and a section of the Republicans. Do you think that this ideological battle will get prolonged than what normally people think would be like last time when it happened when President Clinton was there? It went on for about 3 weeks. Do you see this prolonging further?
Well, it's difficult to say, but what is a feature of America today is that there is enormous polarization.
Yes.
Which makes consensus difficult on economic issues.
Right. Please carry on.
However, we would hope that good sense would prevail and that Republicans and Democrats will be able to overcome their differences and find a way to move ahead.
Okay. I'll come back to you. Let me go to Chidanand Rajghatta. Chidu, I'm sure the sun has risen from the east today also.
Yeah.
But what is the mood on the second day of this shutdown in America?
Well, like I said, I wrote yesterday that one shouldn't overstate, this whole crisis because unlike in India, the government does not play a very central role in people's lives in this country. The government does not run banks or railways or airlines, so a lot of things are going on normally. The difference on the second day is that we now are increasingly starting to realize that there seems to be no effort to resolve this issue. There are no talks going on. There are no, and in fact, the government officials and congressional leaders are saying this could go on for several days, and that is, I think, starting to spook people. And also, if there is any city in the United States where you feel a government shutdown more, it's Washington, because it's a very federal city. The government employs a large number of people in Washington, D.C. You don't see the same effect in, say, Seattle or in Dallas or Houston. But D.C. is a very federal city. Government is a big employer, and you're starting to see the effect here. For instance, if you go to the NASA website, I just went to NASA website moments ago, and the website itself says, due to lapse, you can't access the website. It says due to lapse in federal government funding, this website is not available. And, there are millions of kids across the world, including in India, who go to NASA. And the same thing, if you go to the NIH website, National Institute of Health, the website is, offline. So you're starting to see small sort of effect. Not in sort of in a day-to-day way, outside. But if this goes on for long, I think we'll start to see, much more. And more than anything, this is a test of U.S. credibility because yesterday I spoke to some diplomats and visitors to U.S. And they were saying that, look, if the United States is seen by the world as not being able to resolve its internal issues and, agreeing on simple things like passing a budget or debt ceiling, it doesn't send out a great message to the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
So in that sense, this is starting to get spooky, and it'll get spookier as days go by.
Absolutely. Professor Vijayalakshmi, what's the difference between 1995 and today? In 1995, when President Clinton faced this similar kind of shutdown because there was opposition to his economic plan and budget plan and all these things, and now when Obama faces this, is there, as Meera Shankar was pointing out, has it become more and more partisan?
Yes, and it is different because the Republican Party itself, and I just looked up some very interesting statistics, if I may tell you. Quinnipiac is a consortium of university polls.
Right.
And they have released something really interesting. The first one, let me tell you, 44% of the Republicans inside the Congress oppose the shutdown.
Yes.
So clearly there's something even beyond partisan warfare.
Right.
The first difference is that the Republicans themselves are divided on this.
Right.
There are moderates and extreme conservatives. And this extreme conservatives, the seat is actually about 12 to 20. And basically what you're seeing is a situation where they are literally the tail wagging the dog kind of situation.
Right.
So the Republican moderates, even when they realize the mood of moderate voters is going to cost them electorally, and the margins might become more difficult, and they are going to have to fight elections after all in the House. They retain now a majority, but 32. But they can't do business this way. So they know that, and they want to do that. That's the first difference. That is not polarization alone, but we're seeing the emergence of extreme conservative, fiscal conservatism
within
the Republican Party, and it's divided them right across. The second difference you're seeing is that tying the shutdown to a very specific bill, which took 2 torturous years
Absolutely.
to be passed.
Yes.
And that is a very popular bill by all aspects. Most people are still saying, well, 30, 40, the percentages depending on the polls that we look at. But really, Girish, the real issue is, can you actually tie a government spending to one legislation? The cost of legislation has gone up.
Right.
That polarization which Ambassador Shankar talked about, the cost of it has actually gone up because just one protection, patient protection and affordable
Right.
care, that's what it's actually called. Imagine such a nice name, patient protection. Normally you'd have seen everybody
should have.
but it's become Obamacare.
Right.
So see the political situation, and therefore that's the second difference, tying it to this. Third, there was a lot more. It was a divided government. I was watching at that time as well. In fact, I was in the US at that time, so I do recall that there was a lot more effort.
Right.
For the elders and the moderates on both sides of the party to work out references,
Right.
conference committees. The committees seem to be failing now because of even further polarization. And
Right.
that is a real political
And
problem.
as Chidu was telling us just now that there are no meetings are being held.
Exactly.
Everybody seems to be very
And I'll tell you one
sanguine
of the
about
things
whole
that
thing.
I read, and I think it's true, because I think it's very, I asked myself, why would these guys who must be reading all the polls that we all read,
Yes.
they know it's going to cost a lot politically, and there are future political careers. Politics is not for the day,
Yeah.
nor is it policy. So therefore it has consequences, electoral consequences. Why would they do this? Why would they pursue? Most of the guys who are extreme, the Tea Partiers and the Conservatives, I think, are basically safe seat, legislators. So they are not facing their constituency, and they actually believe that costing them, the yes vote would cost them more than bringing
They are
down a
looking at
government shutdown.
So what you're trying to say is these people who are opposing it are looking at it purely from their own constituency point of view, whether they...
No. Their belief is very severe.
Yes.
But they're also, the fact is that they are in safe seats.
They're in safe seats. Let me get Pramit in on this. Pramit, you think that is where the problem lies, or is it a little more deeper? The ideological problem is a little more deeper than this, that a section of the Republicans who are opposing it, the Tea Party group or whatever as it is known as, Has the ideological divide become deeper?
Well, definitely within, I think it's been mentioned earlier, that there is a divide now within the Republican Party. The Republican Party, crudely speaking, had a working class support base and a corporate leadership.
Right.
The global financial crisis, the subprime crisis, has essentially splintered that. The working class, small town base, mass base, which has essentially become part of the core of the Tea Party movement, doesn't trust that corporate leadership anymore, obviously because that corporate leadership is very closely connected to Wall Street. So as a consequence, the Republican Party leadership is now unable, if you wish, to be able to bring its own party supporters on board for these type of bits of legislation. So those, as the professors mentioned, those who are coming out of the Tea Party movement and the legislators who are coming from that base of support are in constituencies where there is nobody else for them to worry about. But they believe that the leadership of the Republican Party went astray. Not completely untrue, but their argument is that it has to go back to a much more traditional, small town, conservative, and as mentioned, very fiscally conservative concept of conservatism, which is what is hamstrung the government today. Obama has made it clear he wants to work with the moderate Republican leadership, but he can't find them, or they are too scared to come to deals.
Right.
The present speaker, John Boehner, was crucial in ending ending the so-called fiscal cliff crisis in 2011, before America actually went over the fiscal cliff. But as a consequence, he was pilloried by his own party members, by the Tea Party, and he no longer has the ability to swing them on board again.
Okay. Professor Ashok Desai, we are told, as Chidu was pointing out, it's not that, this kind of a shutdown, if it had happened in India, we would have been crippled and paralyzed. But it has not still had that kind of a crippling effect in America. But how long will it take to have that kind of an effect? Economically, if you look at it?
Well, actually, I think they are bound to come to a solution within 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Because they have to. The only problem, there are two problems. One is that the US Constitution is about 200 years older than ours.
Right.
And therefore has no solution for a situation of this sort. In our country, for example, if there's something like this happened, we would have a general election and we would solve the problem.
Right.
But they just can't do it that way.
Right.
The other problem
The
is
government,
a basic...
here, if the budget had not been passed, the government would have fallen.
No, but it could always go back to the electorate.
No, in India, that's what...
For
right.
which there is no constitutional provision.
There's no...
There, everybody is elected for 4 years, full stop. And the other is a much more basic long-term economic problem, namely that the United States is hardly growing. The economy is not growing. And in order to stimulate employment and income, it needs to run larger fiscal deficits. But the larger the fiscal deficit, the faster the national debt grows, and a point may come when the national debt, it becomes impossible to repay the national debt.
There is this debt ceiling crisis which is in the offing there.
Which is behind these expenditure issues like health insurance and like education and so on. And that is possibly an insoluble problem. And we may look at it as a political problem, but actually it is a national problem.
Okay. So Meera Shankar, I was asking Professor Vijayalakshmi this question earlier. About the difference between what happened in 1995 and what's happening now. You think that Obama has any leeway left now? How is he going to solve the crime? Where will he have to look for to find solution to this?
Well, when President Clinton faced a similar situation, he reached out to Speaker Newt Gingrich, who was Republican, and they were able to craft a consensus.
Yes.
But in the present situation, I think the differences are deeper. Besides the economy of America and the global economy are in a far more uncertain position today than they were during Clinton's time. But I think the looming debt ceiling crisis, because if the debt ceiling is not increased beyond around $17 trillion, which it is today, then you could have a situation of US government default on its debt, which I think nobody would want, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans. So if you're optimistic, you would hope that this will be resolved by the time the debt crisis becomes, the debt ceiling crisis becomes intractable.
Right. Okay, Chidu, Chidu, this debt ceiling crisis is in the offing, but before that, Obama and the U.S. Congress itself, it's not just Obama's problem, it's the problem of the U.S. Congress itself. So, how soon do you think this could be resolved, or do you think, as you were pointing out earlier, people seem to be very sanguine. There's no talks going on. Obama is going and playing golf, and everybody else is having their weekends or holidays and things like that. Is there when do you think the Congress will be woken up, will be shaken up to react to this crisis?
Well, you're right. I mean, a lot of people are saying that this is just, as we say in India, this is just a trailer, and the real movie is debt ceiling crisis.
Right.
The date for that, the D-Day for that is October 17th, when they have to bump up the debt ceiling to close to 17 billion. So there is a sense that things have to be addressed, but like I said, both sides are, experts at brinkmanship, it appears. In fact, President Obama was supposed to go to the Far East on a 4-country tour. We hear just now that he's reduced that to just 2 countries. I think he's done Malaysia and one other country, but he's still traveling. And so are the various other government officials. Secretary Kerry is out. So they're pretending that, giving a sense that things are normal at the higher government level. But I think my sense is that, as one of your guests pointed out, there's a hardcore sort of Tea Party extremists who have dug their heels in. They're the crucial elements in resolving this. The Republican Party, the more moderate leadership, at some point, has to talk to them and get them out of their position. And my sense is, once they feel that they have made their point and they have impressed their constituents, they can really hold this government to ransom. They may come around and think start moving again. There are also numerous opinion polls which have started coming now about how unpopular the Congress is. It is incredible. Congress approval rating is something like 10%. It's pathetic. But like I said, it has to start hurting people at a very basic level, on a day-to-day transaction level. That's not happening yet, like I said again, because the government is not very central to most people. For instance, take gas prices. They're not affected. You can still go to a gas station, pump gas. And in fact, they're saying the longer this crisis goes on, gas prices will become cheaper because demand will fall, and there'll be a lot of supply. And in any case, gas is not something that the government controls. So one gets a sense that this will resolve when people start to hurt. And they're not really hurting yet. A lot of government employees are hurting, of course, in the military and the police, and they're all spooked that if this goes on long enough, their paychecks will start getting delayed. But so far, that hasn't happened. When that starts to happen, it wind down very quickly.
Okay, Professor Desai, my question is, this economic. When will the people start feeling the economic pinch? And when will the countries of the world outside America will start feeling the economic pinch? if ever?
Actually, if this lasted for some time, then of course people will start feeling it. But like our country, the US also is a federal country.
Right.
And let's say 75% of the government is really state government.
Right.
So most people are not really affected by this. I mean, you notice this only in Washington, and as you can see, all the news is coming out of Washington.
Right.
We just don't know what's happening in Texas.
Right.
I'm sure Texas has no idea what's going on in
Right.
Washington.
No, but there's also a feeling, some commentators, some analysts feel that, in fact, this kind of a situation is actually going to help Americans economically. Do you see anything like that happening?
No. The US has been the world's leading economy
Right.
on the basis of innovation. It has been the most innovative economy
Right.
for almost 200 years.
Right.
And today that innovation is failing. The last big innovation was information technology, which was very much an American technology.
Right.
And it rode the wave for 30 years.
Right.
And we also rode that wave.
Right.
Now
And
they
we
need
continue to ride
something
that wave.
as big as that, and you can see nothing on the horizon. This is the biggest danger for the US. If it stops innovating, where will it go?
Okay. Professor Vijayalakshmi, so, this whole crisis is not something which is causing so much of a problem as it would have had if it would have happened in India. But how will America's image be affected across the world by this when such a crisis happens?
Well, the first thing everybody notices is the politics. I have to say that. Though the exhaustive understanding one gets is it's economics, and it's always economics. But that forms the backdrop. But
Right.
politics, I think you saw already on the Syrian front.
Right.
There was a exchange of, image of United States as backing down, losing face, etc. So this, especially when it's going to go towards a crisis of defaulting payments,
Right.
Credibility has to rest on your ability to pay.
Right.
There's no way you can get around that. No politics and no optics can get around that. So I think that would make a huge dent, and therefore, as it was mentioned, that one would expect that there would be some effort by the leadership of both the parties. And I hesitate to say this, but I've been writing that this bipartisanship seems to be ending for some reason, and I'm looking at the reasons why. But the fact is that unless and until the leadership of both the parties make a decisive move at this point and make this a temporary shutdown, I see some figures which say that it's only about 0.1% if it's a 2-day shutdown, and it's 0.3% of the GDP for a week shutdown. So they have all these figures.
Yes.
But that's not it. The question you asked is very important, because if you are racing towards a crisis and you have no way to avert or to negotiate
Right.
and transition that crisis, imagine what your name will be after that.
Absolutely.
It'll be quite horrendous.
Absolutely. Pramit, this credibility crisis, how is it going to affect the credibility of, say, the US president when he deals with leaders from other countries, that we were asking the same question last week when the Indian Prime Minister was in US and talking to the US president, and as Pakistan president, Pakistan Prime Minister and Bangladesh Prime Minister, that how the domestic issues will affect the credibility when they deal with leaders outside. I'm asking the same question about how the US president's credibility will be affected.
Well, to some degree, yes, obviously. He's already cancelled a trip, 2 side trips, I think, to Malaysia that he was planning after the ASEAN summit in Brunei, which he will still go to. But obviously, the fact that he's cancelled a state visit to Malaysia will go down relatively poorly. But keep in mind that Obama has been signaling for quite some time that he really doesn't see the United States as quite the same thing as it was in the past, that he doesn't believe America should be shouldering all of the leadership of the world, and that he would much prefer that American troops go home, that America's responsibilities to the rest of the world be diminished, that other countries take over a lot of what America does globally. And as a number of people who've worked in the White House and in the State Department have now written, this was a president who had very little patience for diplomacy and foreign policy as a whole. He really saw his job as passing things like healthcare, immigration reform. So in many ways, his credibility as a president on the international sphere is already being diminished by a deliberate policy on his own part that I don't want to be seen as the great global leader that previous presidents have been.
Okay, Chidu, you think that, is there a concern among the Indians? Do you see some concern that India should have about what is happening there? When do you think India will have to start worrying about what is happening there?
No, I don't particularly think, it's going to go to that extent that we have to start, worrying about it. Like I said, I expect, you have to understand the background to this. The United States is changing very rapidly. This country has changed beyond recognition in the 20 years or so I've been here. And there is a small and increasingly shrinking group of people in this country who are not able to reconcile to this change. And that is the core of the Tea Party. That is, senators like Ted Cruz, who is the one who's led this whole, the shakedown of the government.
Like somebody said, like somebody said that the part of the Republicans are not still reconciled to their defeat in 2012.
Yeah, defeated, and not just that, and increasingly it looks like, the thing is you can't roll this change back. This country has changed. They elected an African-American president. In numerous spheres of life, you're starting to see various minorities, come up. And the constituency, which clings to the old America is shrinking rapidly, and they're becoming smaller and smaller, and they have no choice but to accept it, but they're going to fight it out. But I don't see this crisis, going on forever. I think they will have to reconcile to change. At some point, they will throw in, if not throw in the towel, they'll at least, allow things to get back to normal. Like I said, a lot of people are saying that this is a test case for the debt-ceiling crisis, and in one sense, the resolution of this will also be a pointer to how that will go. And I expect this government to tide over it. And by and large, I think there is a sense, that there is an acceptance and recognition in large parts of this country, and particularly East Coast, West Coast, that things have changed and probably changed for the better, and it's more reflective of a more diverse United States. And things will shut on after this momentary lapse of reason.
Okay, Chidu, I think we have come to we have to end here. We completely run out of time. But as you say that, America has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades or so, more diversity, but along with more diversity, there seems to be less and less bipartisanship, which all my guests also were talking about. Let's hope that this standoff will end as soon as possible. We'll keep a watch on it in any case. Thanks to all my guests, Meera, Shankar, Pramit, Chaudhary, Ashok, Desai, Prof. Vijayalakshmi, and Chidanand, Rajghatta from Washington, D.C. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another edition of Big Picture, same time tomorrow.